pretty excited for you to kind of hear about his story today because there's a ton of hope in it. And I just want you to know how important it is. Mickey, thank you for being here, first of all. And second of all, it's kind of miraculous that you're here given where you've been in the last month or so. You and I just kind of...
Yeah, so this Band-Aid on my cheek is not because I got in a fight, but actually remember I did get in a fight with my razor in the shower, and I cut myself and I can't get it to stop bleeding. And the reason for that is I've been on blood thinners for the past few months because I had open heart surgery about 2 months ago. So had some chest pains working out. It persisted long enough that I finally decided to go check that out. Why am I having these chest pains? It escalated quickly to a doctor standing in front of me saying, Mickey, your heart is pretty much 100% blocked. And I'm not sure why you're standing here today because you shouldn't be standing here today. And so it's a miracle that I'm here today. And so I, about 2 months ago, had open quadruple bypass. I actually had 7 blockages. And so they cleaned out 3 blockages and bypassed 4. And so in recovery, one of my friends sent me a book, and it was written by a cardiologist. It said, The Heart Speaks. And one of the mysteries in me getting quadruple bypass surgery is I'm in good shape, I eat well, my blood pressure is okay, my cholesterol is okay. So why does Mickey get 100% blockage? So I'm reading the book, learning, and lo and behold, I learned that one of the leading causes of heart disease, which is the #1 killer of men in America, is loneliness and isolation. And bing, bing, bing. I've had a lot of loneliness and isolation in my life. And that's one of the reasons, big part of my story and why I'm here today to talk to you all. So.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Didn't you say that that big artery that runs across the face of the heart, the one they call the widowmaker, that was the one that you had?
Yeah.
Along with the others, it was totally clogged.
Yeah. So it's a miracle. I feel called, and I feel blessed to be sitting here and with Tom and sharing my story with you all.
Yeah. Good. Well, let's do this. Before we get to the overcoming parts of your story, let's just kind of put some kind of stakes in the ground about who you are and what you've done and that sort of thing. So let's start by you just kind of giving a glimpse of your career path. You know, we talked about kind of entrepreneurial life and isolated life and different things like that. And one of the markers for you is that you, at some point in time in your career journey, you became the CEO of Duke Energy, overseeing Peru and Ecuador. So just bring us into your work journey a little bit. How'd you get there? What'd you do? What was your secret sauce? That kind of thing.
Secret sauce was I was willing to move to Peru, but I'll go. No, I graduated from A&M, accounting degree, worked for back then Ernst & Winnie. I was graduated in '86, it was still Ernst & Winnie back in the day. The Big 8 was still the Big 8. Worked at Ernst & Winnie for 4 years, and then went to work for, at the time, it was Panhandle Eastern Corporation, and which then eventually became Pan Energy, Duke Energy. Got an MBA from U of H, and the executive, so I'm a Cougar, or however they do that, Cougar as well. And got into business development. Duke Energy at the time, like many utilities, was buying assets overseas. We bought some assets in South America, and they needed someone to go. And as I said, I raised my hand and said, I'll go. I spoke a little Spanglish, grew up on the border. I'm good to go. So that was how I became CEO of Duke Energy. We called it Northern Latin America.
Okay. So one of the things I've heard you say about your experience down there when you took on that position is that you were in over your head. Okay. So I'd love to know kind of what you meant by that and what it was like when you were there.
Well, so I'd never really managed anything, right? I'd been a project manager and managed some projects, but all of a sudden I was the CEO of a fairly large company in Peru. And we had 300 employees, and as I said, I spoke a little Spanish, but more Spanglish than Spanish. So I was learning Spanish very quickly, learning the culture, learning the market, learning the competitors, the customers, etc. Everybody that reported to me was probably, I was in my mid-30s at the time, we're in their mid-50s, so I had direct reports that were looking at me like, who is this punk kid and why did they move him down here to tell us what to do? So, I was just lost. I think I was Duke's very first expat, so they had no sort of expat support system. My wife and I were kind of winging it, and every day, I lost sleep every night. I think I woke up at midnight or 1 a.m. and just tossed and turned. But of course, Duke wanted the EBITDA that we had forecasted in the economic model. So a lot of pressure, and I was really feeling completely overwhelmed and unprepared to do my job. And I had no support. That was the key. I really had nobody to talk to, nobody to talk about my fears, my anxieties, my failures. And so it's just keeping that all bottled up, the isolation, the loneliness, trying to figure it out in my head at 2 and 3 in the morning. And I can tell you that it didn't work well.
The idea of the anxiety that you mentioned, in the last couple of years, I've done some reading on executive anxiety and the prevalence of that. You guys probably know, but we live in the most anxious culture in history in so many ways, in terms of anxiety being something that's recognized and kind of prevailing in a lot of ways. And it's really, really widespread. The problem is nobody talks about it. So here's a story I heard last week. Some of you guys will know Bruce Matthews, Hall of Fame football player, played for the Oilers and the Tennessee Titans. And he played more NFL football games than any other offensive lineman in history. He made the all NFL, top 100 list of all time. And he was telling a story about getting ready for his 13th consecutive Pro Bowl. So I'd say pretty accomplished by that point in time, right? And he talked about being absolutely eaten up with anxiety, that this was the day they were going to discover that he really didn't know what he was doing. Isn't that amazing? That could be that much a part, this imposter syndrome and that kind of thing. I'm sure you were in the middle of all that, yeah?
Yeah, and so what did I do with that anxiety? How did I manage it? Well, not well. I didn't know it at the time, but I was a sex addict, and what that means was years earlier, growing up, Mom and Dad did a great job in so many ways raising me and my 2 sisters. Wonderful family in many respects, but Mom and Dad were both very emotionally shut down, very emotionally unavailable. And so what that meant is a little guy going through, we moved around a lot when I was young. My dad had a job. We moved from town to town. A lot of stress, trying to fit in and find new friends. And so I didn't know what to do with those negative feelings, the fear, the rejection, the stress. And about middle school or so, I found Dad's porn stash, which was, at that time pretty common in the late 70s, early 80s, that dads had porn stashes at home. My dad had a big one, and I learned how to deal with those negative emotions by looking at porn and masturbating. And so that sexual arousal and release replaced numbing out or medicating the negative emotions. And I learned how to do that from an early age, from about middle school. And the one time, a couple of times actually, my dad caught me. He said, just lock the door. And basically, don't get caught, right? Don't get caught. So with that, taught me, I'm sure he wasn't trying to intentionally teach me this, but a secret life, a double life. Keep that stuff hidden, keep it behind locked doors so nobody knows what you're doing. And that came through in Peru. What I started doing was acting out again with the stress and the anxiety. My wife, Stephanie, and I had 2 small kids. Back then, you couldn't get DirecTV in Latin America, so you got a pirated version, which meant all the channels run all the time, including the porn channels. Not good. Prostitution is much more available and much more accepted down there, so started acting out with prostitutes, and eventually had about a 1.5 year long affair with a woman that ended up with her getting pregnant. And so that was I call it the beginning of the beginning, the bottom in recovery, we call that reaching a bottom, when you have to face those consequences.
Yeah, that had to have been like kind of an amazing, humbling kind of a time. All right, I want you to just back up for a second, though. I know that one of the things you've also told me is that there was a faith component to your life that was going on at the same time, right? So you'd come into a relationship with Christ at some point in time, right?
Yeah, when I was at A&M, senior at A&M, I had my degree, was engaged to be married to not my current wife, Stephanie. Stephanie's my current wife, is my second wife. But I was engaged to be married and already had a job. I was in the Corps. I was, a senior in the Corps. Life was good, but I felt empty inside. And for the first time out on campus back then, we had a guy that did a really good job of presenting the gospel. He was a great speaker, very charismatic. And one day I happened to stay to the end when he would pray the sinner's prayer, and I prayed that prayer, and I believe that was where I began my relationship with Christ. And, through the years was active in my faith, always active in a church. And at the time I was acting out in Lima, I was the stewardship deacon at our church in Lima. So the epitome of a double life, right? I was this stewardship deacon and, going to meetings and getting up in front of the church and sharing about tithing and giving and acting out in secret. So, there's no more isolated and lonely life than that. Because no matter where you are, you're not who you are. You're not present. You're hiding. You're in secret. So that was probably where a lot of that blockage developed, were in those years and down in Lima.
So it all comes to a crisis moment when this person with whom you're having an affair lets you know she's pregnant, and how does it unfold from there? Your wife, your life.
Yeah, well, my wife's a Jersey girl. She's from New Jersey, which means, when I told her, yes, I'm having an affair, but wait, there's more, she's pregnant. That was a hard night, long, hard night. And, but my wife's she's a warrior. She's a warrior, and I wish she were here today. She's an absolute warrior. So we immediately got into how do we get through this, and came back to Houston. And the first thing we did was tell our pastor, Dave McKechnie, who married us 5 years before. So we had a picture book wedding, beautiful photos. And here I am 5 years later saying, well, here's where we are today. And we'll never forget he's still a friend of ours, sat there and looked at us and he said, guys, I'm going to tell you two things. He said, first, you're not the first couple to sit in those chairs and tell me a story like this, so you're not alone. And he says, more important than what you're going through is how you respond to it. And that will either make you a better person or a bitter person. And so Steph and I decided being better would be the way to go. We didn't want to end up bitter. So that's been one of our mantras over the years. And this was about 21 years ago when that happened.
So part of the way I would map out my life is I feel like I've regularly come to these places that I thought were going to be death to me, and they end up being life to me. And I'm guessing this was like the massive, turning point for you.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So I call that moment when I got that phone call from my mistress. Hello, it's me. I'm pregnant. It's yours. And the whole world just stops and you're like, oh my God, reality has just shown up. And that was the beginning of a real life. So after Pastor McKechnie told us a bit of a better story, he got us into therapy and was diagnosed. I took the test. Patrick Carnes is kind of the guru of sex addiction, and he has a test. He even had a test back then, and I took it and I passed it with flying colors. It's like, I'm not sure what this is, but whatever it is, I got it. Actually, Stephanie was pregnant at the time as well. A pregnant mistress, a pregnant wife, and all this other stuff going on the side. So, I come from a long line of denial, and if I could have, I would have denied it, but it was just all the evidence staring me in the face. I had to, so I started a 12-step recovery, and we also moved from, I got a promotion, because the business, as crazy as my personal life was, the business did very well, so got a promotion to run Duke Energy's business in Brazil, living in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And my wife, Steph, was kind of like, hey, we have this opportunity to move to Brazil. And she's like, are you crazy? You just got diagnosed as a sex addict. You want to move to Brazil? You know? And so again, my wife's a warrior. Am I bleeding? Let me get my... I said, look, let's just go to Sao Paulo, take the thing.
Oh, wow.
Um,
A little down on your chin there, too.
I think I have another Band-Aid. I'll get it in a minute when Tom starts talking. But anyway, I said, well, let's just go to Sao Paulo, take the tour, you know, nothing else. We get a free trip to Brazil. So we go to Brazil, and my wife had the we're never moving to Brazil list of her requirements. She was 6 months pregnant at the time. And so the last thing, all of them got checked off. All of them got checked off the list, and because my boss really wanted me to move there at the time. And so get to the last item on the list, and it was a house. We couldn't find a house. We had 2 small kids. She was pregnant. And we get to the last house, and she says, you just go in and tell me if you think it's worth it. So I go in, look to the house, come back out and say, I think you should go inside. She does. Comes out, tears streaming down her face, saying, I can't believe we're moving to Brazil. And we moved to Brazil, and it was exactly where we needed to be. And we thought we needed to come back to Houston, but our family would have probably destroyed us with all their best intentions. But we needed to be in Brazil to work things out. We had a great home church. We connected with other couples through a home church. I joined as CEO peer advisory group through YPO, which was great for me to share and talk about things with other CEOs. And God really got a hold of my life there. And then a few years later, back to the house story, we had a party in the neighborhood, and the owner of the house came, and we was talking to him, and he said, you know, he had a daughter who had died a few months before we showed up, and died in a car accident. And he said he had raised her in that house. He couldn't stay living there. Needed to take a break, and he was praying every day that God would bring somebody who needed that house. And that was us. Wow. And as soon as I saw your wife walk in, I knew that you were the one. So that was, powerful. God's got us. Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. So the precipitating problem that you described in the beginning is isolation, right? And, you know, like when I got introduced to you, you were called a lone wolf.
Right.
Or you called yourself that. So, you know, if you had the chance to roll it back, and you found yourself as a younger guy in this place where, did you recognize you were isolated? Could you see that at the time? And if you could, you know, and you're sort of trapped in this place where you kind of felt like you were being kind of thrown back and forth into double life. You know, if you could roll it back, is what would have been a preemptive strike, if you will?
Well, it's what my life today, which is I try to stay very connected. And through 12-step recovery meetings, sponsoring men, just very good friendships, very deep friendships there. Do a small group once a week with other men. And, you know, this has happened over years. I didn't just do this flipping a switch, but in learning how to share. You know, it's hard for men, right? Hard for me. How do you share my feelings when I'm not well? I need you. I need your prayers. I need your support. I didn't learn that at home at all. And you know, my dad was a typical man of that time. He still is. He's alive today. I love him. But learning how to do that, getting in that awkward space of getting real, especially when things aren't going well. That's when it's the hardest. And when I need support, I need comfort, I need prayer. It's hard to even get those words out of my mouth. I hate to be the needy guy on the call, the needy guy in the group. Much rather be the guy offering support and help. But that's, you know, again, not doing that is so, yeah, just being more connected with other men who were of the same mind of connecting on that level.
Yeah. There's a little bit of wisdom from the Bible that says, you know, 2 are better than 1. But it's sort of like, woe to the one who falls and doesn't have another to help him up. So you've talked about community and the group that you of guys that you're connected in. Take us into that. How, why is that so important and effective for you? What's the heartbeat there?
Well, just I believe God created us to be connected intimately, deeply with Him, of course, and other people and other men, and in this setting. And so that's hard. I'm not naturally inclined to sit with other men or call other men or take calls from other men and talk about feelings and emotions and that level of intimacy. And so I because that was a big component of what got me to that bottom that I described, and then now I learned got me to the operating table with the quadruple bypass. I'm relentless about learning how to do that, and just whatever it takes to get beyond the ego, get beyond the awkwardness, and prioritize relationships. I try never to miss my small group, because you never know when those moments are going to happen. In 12-step recovery, they happen pretty often, but in a church setting or in a small group setting, you never know when someone's going to show up and they've got something heavy on their heart, a crisis that's unfolding. And so I prioritize calling people back, returning texts, attending small group meetings, and anytime anybody wants to get together, I'm in. And just to make sure that I'm, because you have to also develop the chemistry. You can't just join a small group and all of a sudden, the first meeting you're going to start sharing all your stuff. It takes time. It takes practice and authenticity when you're going through that stuff. And also on the other side, receiving it. It's hard. It's hard for me. One of the things in Brazil, I learned Brazilian men have a very high EQ. And so I'm sitting in these meetings with these guys that are CEOs.
Tell us what you mean by EQ in case.
Emotional quotient. You have IQ, which is intelligence, and EQ, emotional. And they would start weeping in the meeting and not apologize and not stop the meeting. They would just let the tears flow down their face and continue talking. And I was in amazement that a man could actually do that. I was like, what is wrong with these guys? So I learned how to be comfortable sitting in emotions. And for me, anytime, I'm one of those guys, as soon as I feel the emotions coming on, change the subject, get up and leave, whatever. I don't want to be seen crying or emoting. And if another man is emoting, it's probably even worse. You want to, you don't know what to do. You feel like you're in a car wreck scenario. So just learning how to do that and be sitting in those moments and, not, because again, for me, it's literally life and death. I didn't know that, any of this that I just shared with you about the heart disease, but it is literally life and death, learning how to, God created our bodies, created us as spiritual beings in His image. He has the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. They have a very intimate union there, connection, and we're built of the same stuff to be connected at that level with one another, I believe. So
that's really good. So that's sort of the community part of this. What did it take of your wife? I mean, you're still married X many years later. How many years later? 21?
25.
25 years.
20, yeah.
20 years from the time that your world blew up. What did it take for the survival of this marriage? I mean, I don't know what the percentages are, but I'm guessing you're talking about, less than 1% of people who find themselves in a similar situation make it through. What did it take?
Well, again, she's a Jersey girl. She's also really tough, and she's been through some stuff, and she can deal with stuff. So she, there were times she carried me, times I carried her. That home church in Brazil with 4 other families was really powerful. God pulled that together, and just being able to share, for her to be able to share. And she started, infidelity is a common thing, especially with expats and in places like Brazil, because of the prostitution. And so she started hearing other women share their stories of their husbands stepping out, and she started sharing our story, which at first I was like, are you nuts? I don't want to the word to get out, and here I am today sharing this story in front of you. But I was like, this is crazy. I thought we were going to try to keep this on the down low. Well, over time, what happened is she learned that her sharing her story and our story helped her heal, and took that thing that was a wound that was very sensitive to touch to become a scar, which is still there but not as sensitive. And so in 2010, we started working with a group out of Austin, a great ministry called Affair Recovery. And they work exclusively with couples dealing with infidelity. And so we're a mentor couple, and we go to Austin 2, 3, 4 times a year. We have these big weekends with 40 couples from all over the U.S. and sometimes all over the world, and we share our story. So I've shared this story, and I've shared this with her sitting there 50 times, 60 times. And so that ministry and that giving back, which is huge in the recovery, is a concept called Wounded Healer, book by Henri Nouwen, a Catholic priest. And once you've been through something and God's brought you through something, you're a wounded healer, which means that now you have credibility in that space. You've been through it and gotten to the other side, so then you can help others, pay it forward, right? And so we've been doing that for, I guess, 12 or 13 years, and that's a big part for us to heal together and give back. And that's huge for her to help others and tell her story. And that's probably the main place where God has blessed her to hang in there, hang in there, because it is if she were here, she'd be, shaking her head, nodding her head. Yeah, that's been a hard journey, and I've had slips. I haven't been a perfect since that day with Dr. McKechnie's office. So she's had to endure some highs and lows, and some lows that have been pretty low. So as I said, she's a warrior.
So how is you said you came into begin a faith journey like when you were in college or at A&M. And how is your understanding of or experience with God different now from 20 years ago? What do you learn? What do you see? It's fun.
Well, and that's I know where my life goes without God in my life. I will blow up my life. That's where Mickey goes, and that's that story of having to sit and tell my wife, yes, I'm having an affair, but wait, she's pregnant, having unprotected sex with a woman I barely knew. That's where my disease, my flesh, if you want to use a biblical term, takes me, and I'm fully capable of going there. So I try to focus on just being relentless in pursuing God with the connection. I think God speaks to me many times through other men. Many times, and so I just that's in reading and pursuing the Bible study. Very active in our church. We go to Memorial Drive Presbyterian Church over in West Houston. I'm an elder in the church. I just have that because I know if I there's this idea that you can just kind of coast. I want to just take it off a little bit. And I know that, I've lived, the cat has 9 lives, if Mickey had 9 lives, I'm on life 8.5, right? I've already lived out I've had lots of second chances. And so, just that relentless pursuit of God, and it's a very practical, and then when I fail, that's the thing about relationships and connection, when I fail, when I slip, when I look at something I shouldn't look at. It's not that I'm going to be perfect. We have a mantra in recovery, progress, not perfection. I don't keep it secret anymore. I check it in. I talk to people, share it with my wife. It's not that double life anymore. It's not that secret life. So nobody's perfect. Some people have, everybody has their issue. Mine happens to be the sex addiction, but we all have our Achilles heel, our weak spot. And so, being like here, that's joking with somebody, coming here and telling them, I used to have this huge deal with image management, right? My image was everything. It was Andre Agassi, right? Image is everything. And so the way that I battle that is I come here and I tell you guys the story, right? And I'm like telling on myself. Or outing myself, and so it's a huge help in my own struggle of ego and image management and all of that stuff. So it's part of the way I do that.
I'll tell you the picture that comes to my mind, man, just for you to be here and to tell your story. So again, there's this truth that's found in the Bible that says that God's opposed to the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. And not just the grace like of being forgiven, but of being empowered. So here's the picture that comes to my mind. If you would imagine like a reservoir, like a lake, right? And it's wide and it's deep, and you're looking out there. As far as you can see, there's this incredible crystal clear blue water in this reservoir, right? And then you look over on the other side, and let's just say for a second that reservoir sort of represents the person, character of God, right? And then you look over on the other side of that reservoir, and coming out of that reservoir, there's a riverbed that runs down out of the reservoir. And you're looking, and at that particular moment, you're looking, and that riverbed is dry. You're like, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would the riverbed be so dry when the reservoir is so full? And then you look at that intersection between the reservoir and the riverbed. The riverbed is our life. And how could it be so dry here when it's so full and clear and rich over here? And then you look at that connecting point between the two, and you see there's locks in a dam. And what you're describing to us, honestly, is these locks and these dams that open and close on the basis of kind of pride, which closes it down, and humility that lets something bigger than and better than you flow down into your life and to bring refreshment and renewal and restoration, where it used to be pretty dry and dusty. And so thank you for that, for sure, for being humble enough to share your story with us.
Yeah, you're welcome. Would you mind putting up that? Yeah. There's a picture that's meant a lot to me, painting, over the last, few years. And one of the things we can do in community with one another is comfort one another. And one of the, we think of Jesus many times, and we think of him as needless and wantless, like he was this Marlboro man, right, with steely eyes. And so this is a painting by a painter named Carl Bloch, and he's a Dutch painter. And this is a painting that Luke 22:43, an angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. And that's a picture of Jesus being comforted by an angel. And I always say, I'm gonna ask him when I get to heaven, did that really help? And I'm guessing he's gonna say it did. I'm just human, fully human, needed that comfort. He knew what he was about to face. But then the Matthew 26:38, then he said to his disciples, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me. Jesus was vulnerable. He shared his heart that was overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. And so he's our model as Christians, and Jesus modeled vulnerability and being comforted, and so as men, it's the hardest part really isn't comforting, it's receiving the comfort, receiving that comfort. So if he did it, so can we.
Right on. Well, just last thing, if a guy's going, man, I feel kind of stuck in my life, whether it's in the particular things of, porn or anything like that, or any other way in their life, what kind of point of coaching would you offer here today for a man who feels stuck? Well,
pray and ask the guys at your table to pray for you, and, for connection, right? Connection, that God would bring men into your life that you can connect with, feel safe, and be able to, pray with and meet with in your church or in your community. And, if it is I know I've done enough of these talks. Nobody wants to be the first guy up here to talk to me, right? Maybe he has an issue with, but.
Well, now we all know to be watching. So.
And so Tom's going to share my phone number and email. And I've, through recovery and fair recovery, I haven't heard, there's nothing I haven't heard. You're not going to blow me away or shock me or anything like that. So I'd love to be of service that way. But Yeah, just really look for opportunities. Brene Brown is one that if you guys have ever heard of Brene Brown, she's a psychology professor at the University of Houston. She's kind of blown up lately in the last few years. She has a book she just wrote called Atlas of the Heart, and that book gives language of emotion and feeling in a very bite-sized, accessible way. So I highly recommend that book. And it actually has a companion HBO 5-part series as well. And so learning the words and the language, and someone used to ask me how I felt, that was hot or cold. It's like, I didn't know how I felt. I had no idea. So learning that's how we connect, through emotion and learning and feeling. And usually not the good stuff, it's the hard stuff. It's the negative, it's the crisis, the valley, the bottom is where we really connect with others. And so learning that language has been really important. I'm still learning how to do that.
Awesome. That's great. So in a follow-up email to today, I'll just send your contact info, and just know that Mickey is accessible to anybody who needs to have another conversation. Also, just so you know, that one of the things with Toolbox is we never want to leave guys spun up with no place to go. And that's another reason why we put that little QR code there, is that there's ways we can serve you and try to help you get connected into community, or wrestle with questions, or any other way that reasonably and practically we could be of benefit and help to you. We'd love to do that, rather than we don't want to leave guys in isolation, just spun up and no place to go. So that's our heartbeat. And the real heartbeat we have is that the starting place really to all the strength that we need, the help we need, is a relationship with God through faith in Christ, and recognizing that Jesus Christ surrendered his life so we could be forgiven, and that he actually rose from the dead so we could be given a completely new kind of life. Not just a religious life, but a relationship with God where you have a power inside yourself that comes from him. And so we love to help guys experience that along the way as well. So anyhow, how about just a big word of thanks for Mickey for sharing this?